Good morning, everybody. My name is John Crowe. Firstly, I'd like to thank Geraldine Daly of University of Limerick, who asked me very nicely if I would be able to talk here today about life with multiple myeloma. And anybody that knows Geraldine knows how hard it is to refuse any request she might make. Thanks, Geraldine. I would like at this stage to acknowledge, before I go any further, all the work that the medical teams, and that would include from Dr. O'Keefe in Limerick, Geraldine, Fiona, Delma, Maura, Maureen, and in ULH, and the team in James's, Dr. Brown, now Professor as he's known, Dr. Bacon, Dr. Hayden, and Liz Higgins, and all their staff for having me here where I am today. This is just my story. It's been told in my own words, but I hope it will be of benefit to somebody here anyway. I'm 63 years old, the eldest of 10 boys. 9 boys and 1 girl. Sadly, I lost my brother, a younger brother, in January of 2018 to cancer. I'm married to Charlotte and we have 3 boys. I have been farming since I was 14 and at various times also had different off-farm jobs. But since 2014 I am back full-time farming, dairy farming as it is, with the help of Charlotte and my youngest son John. The boys are 31, 29 and 26. Just when you say the youngest son, it might seem very young. Before my first diagnosis I was in full-time employment, but I was also a suckler farmer. Not many wasted hours in those days. In 2007, I started to have pain in my hip and just put it down to farming. All those wettings over the years, my ribs were tender, but again, I had probably got a puck from a cow or a jolt off a tractor or some such thing. Plenty of probable causes. So in September 2007, a good friend of ours, younger than myself, died with bone cancer. And it was at the cue to his funeral that myself and Charlotte decided that we had better do something about these pains. It was like a wake-up call. Thank you, Martin. So the first step was my GP, who took bloods and sent me for x-rays. He also made an appointment with a Dr. Conlon in Crowe, as he felt it might be an orthopaedic issue. With many tests carried out and visits to Crowe, the regional LUH, on the 6th of December, when my GP phoned Charlotte to say both Dr. Conlon and himself felt that I needed to be admitted to Limerick University Hospital for more tests, and he was to go there, and I was to go there next morning at the 7th of December, 2007. I'm quite nervous, so please excuse me. And what I didn't know then is that Charlotte had pushed our GP for his thoughts on the issue, and he was fairly sure it was multiple myeloma that we were dealing with. And to be quite honest, he wasn't very positive when Charlotte pushed him on the outcome. Keeping it to herself, she phoned me at work and on the Thursday evening and explained that I would not be at work on Friday, that I had this appointment. And I said I couldn't possibly not go to work on Friday as it was our busiest day, and that I just couldn't miss it. But she said, there's no issue, you are going and that's it. Thank you. Actually, that Thursday night, I also remember I had a difficult calving, a cow calving, so I had to deal with that. The next morning, Friday morning, we headed into the regional. On arrival, I was actually unable to put my feet under me, and Charlotte to get a wheelchair out of A&E to bring me in. We have often said it was like freewheeling into the garage when you've just run out of petrol. Little did we know what was facing us at that time. After quite a long day in A&E, the diagnosis of multiple myeloma was confirmed, and I was admitted to the general ward, not 4B, the cancer ward in the regional. This was a stressful time as we were dealing with 2 issues, my hip, which was in bits, and the cancer. The first week was very rough. All we wanted were answers, and the orthopaedics couldn't help us with the myeloma, and myeloma couldn't help us with orthopaedics. Stressful would be a word that comes to mind. I also had my first encounter with a bone marrow aspirate. Indications were the hip had to be sorted before multiple myeloma could be addressed. Eventually, after about a week, I got to Ward 4B. I was extremely ill at this time, having developed a chest infection and a very high temperature, most likely pneumonia. The main issue, though, was at this time was to get the temperature down so as I could have the repair job on my hip, which I believe was using a gamma nail and plates. As Dr. Conlon said, he ran with a window of opportunity and dashed me to surgery when the temperature seemed to be dropping before the next spike. Thankfully, this was a huge success. So much so now that I have to stop and think which hip had been done. Back to 4B after the op, quite sick. Remember waking up one morning, realising I was not immortal, not going to live forever, and at 51, with a life-threatening issue, I needed to focus on where my life was going. I was discharged from 4B on Christmas Eve with an appointment for early January to start myeloma treatments. Could not find fault with any personnel that treated me, and was happy that outlook was positive, even though it was going to be a struggle. January treatment commenced. Tablets for chemo, steroids and bone strengthener. Ill enough, but okay. Plan was to make James's Hospital in March for stem cell transplant assessment. Met Dr. Brown, as I said, now Professor, Liz Higgins and team, but unfortunately myeloma levels were not low enough at that stage, so back to Limerick for more chemo. A Velcade, I think, but Geraldine or any of the staff can help you out if you need to know exactly what I got. This was the chemo in injection format, as I said. I think it was Velcade. This meant many visits in and out of Limerick. I found this treatment quite difficult. Was admitted a few times with infections and a clot. During this time I developed acute nerve-ending myopathy and was extremely nauseous. Excuse me. Late September 2008, back up to James's for transplant, having had the harvest done earlier, which I found hard. Got severe back pain from the injections to release the new cells. Found the chemo pre-transplant very severe, bad sickness and diarrhea, unable to eat, bad mouth ulcers and down my throat. Felt very sick. I must say here that I'd been told this may happen due to the type of chemo, but I had no idea how bad it was going to be. Never again, said I. I am aware that not everybody gets this sick, but I did lose my hair, didn't really bother me. As I was sick, as I was so sick, I was quite content to be in isolation and didn't want to talk to anyone, apart from Charlotte, who was by my side at all times. At this stage, our boys were getting a bit concerned. I had been in Dublin a couple of weeks and I spoke to them on the phone, but I remember one occasion they came up and came round to the window. We were on the ground floor and we were actually able to speak over the phone because the windows were double glazed and they could see me, and I think they went home a little bit happier. Again, all I can say is that the help, support and encouragement from Professor Brown and his entire team, the staff of James's, Dr. O'Keefe and all the girls in Limerick was so important to myself and Charlotte, and we so much appreciate it. I was discharged from James's in late October 2008, but I was very unwell and I was readmitted to Limerick after about a week because I still kept losing weight and I was still very nauseous. They brought me in, and after about a week's treatment in there of intravenous foods and things, I think I turned the corner. Got back home and got over Christmas just picking at bits, but because I had no taste buds and no desire to eat, and I was still quite nauseous as well. We got to Portugal for a week in February, thought the heat might help a bit, but I was still very sick at that time. Throughout this time I was admitted to Limerick on a number of occasions for different reasons, and thanks to the shrewd eye of the nurses who looked after me in there and who had grown to know and to realise that to understand me and see how I may not always tell them how sick I really was. Obviously you don't really want to stay in hospital, but thankfully they saw through the guys and on a couple of occasions kept me when I could have been going home if it was left to myself. I did actually. The constant changes of doctors often caused concerns, in rotations and different things. So it was, unless you met Dr. O'Keefe or some of the girls that you knew, the interns or the rotation doctors weren't quite aware of how sick I might be. But I continued to improve, and I got back to work in July of 2009. Now, at this time, I must say that, but for Charlotte and her encouragement, I would have become a recluse, because after being hospitalised and nearly institutionalised for so long, I really didn't want to go out. I didn't want to be seen socially, not for any reason, but I was just a private kind of person, and I suppose you felt, oh, they're all going to be talking about me, this kind of thing. But as I said, Charlotte encouraged and got me out, and we got back on track. We continued on. That was 2009 then, so we worked away for a couple of years. In 2012, Dr. O'Keefe suggested I go on Revlimid for a 12-month period. Now, in time I learned that there was a feeling that I might have had a bit of a relapse or something at this stage, but it was just as a precaution he put me on it, he said. All this time I had been having severe pain or discomfort in my feet especially, and hands, which turned out to be bad nerve-ending pain as a result of the medication. I also had constant hiccups that lasted forever and were very frustrating, plus the bad cramps in my legs and hands. In spite of this, I continued my office job, and I was made redundant in the end of 2014. Yes, I was also back farming, doing lots of hours and jumping electric fences, to dismay of a lot of the staff in Limerick, and I presume James, if they'd known about it. But that was me. From my diagnosis, I made a conscious decision to fight this cancer and all my being, with all my being, to an extent that I more or less built a virtual wall around myself, keeping my family, friends, lifestyle on the outside, giving me all the strength to fight the fight. This I was able to identify after treatment and after some time, and I knew it upset Charlotte, but gave me the strength to focus on my mission. She felt pushed away a bit, I understand, but understood when I explained it after working it out myself. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Fast forward to 2015. During my monthly checkups, I mentioned to the doctor, Dr. O'Keefe was away at the time, he was on sabbatical, that I had some slight pain in my back, and immediately the doctor organised a skeletal survey. I went in on the 6th of December, and I think just purely by coincidence, the following day my collarbone was broken. Now, myself and Charlotte realised almost immediately this was it. It was back again with no warning. Now, Dr. O'Keefe had said he would tell me when it was coming back, I wouldn't tell him. But unfortunately, nobody could have told us because it came back just like that. It was a big upset to us both, more than we would have imagined. But not being ones to ponder, we got back on the roster in Limerick. Sean Crowe's name was quickly back up on the whiteboard and in the day ward again. But the first thing I had were 2 sessions of radium, I believe just to help to strengthen, to repair the damage to my collarbone. We commenced Velcade then, had 2 or 3 treatments in Limerick, and then I was made aware of the home care Velcade nurse. This was a huge new development and a great thing altogether, because now we were being treated at home, and it spared us the job of travelling into Limerick, which is 25 miles, not a big journey but at the same time, if you're doing it every day for Velcade treatment and you're not feeling well, it's a massive journey. You were being jolted around the car no matter how well Charlotte drove, so it was a fantastic breakthrough. This worked very well until the middle of January 2016, when I started to feel very unwell, and by mid-February I was admitted back in. I think I gave 3 weeks in 4B again. The Velcade and the other medication was having a very bad effect. Fortunately though, the levels were down low enough, and once I was feeling a little bit better, I was able to come back to James's. I was due to come back to James's sometime in March for the second round of stem cell transplant. They had taken enough in the first harvest to do 2, and I think 2 was the max you can do anyway. But there wasn't a bed available, so it was actually early in May before I got back. I was again very sick in James's. much the same symptoms. But Charlotte thinks that I wasn't quite as bad, and looking back, I probably wasn't as I was the first time. I suppose the first time I had given 9 or 10 months being ill before we got for transplant. This time I was only ill 4 or 5 months. So the body was probably a lot stronger to take treatment. I got back home actually on the June bank holiday, nauseous and weak, but felt I recovered quicker this time. Having said that, the nerve-wracking myopathy was more severe and still is quite severe today. Had all those checked out, and it is attributed to treatments, and that's just the fact of life. That's the way we get on with it. I continue to suffer with cramps in my legs and hands and thighs in different places. But as I said, we get on with it. The end of 2016, I was feeling a bit tired and a bit short of breath, so I mentioned it to Dr. O'Keefe. He suggested we meet the cardiologist, and long short story short, after an angiogram, and I had a stent fitted in Easter 2018. So just to add to the consternation. I'm still attending Dr. O'Keefe and his wonderful team bi-monthly in UHL. My myeloma is not an easy one to pick up, and there is concern with every dart of pain it is on its way back. But as Dr. O'Keefe has said to me, and I believe myself, you live your life without taking account of that. You just live it as it is, and you deal with it if it does come back, or when it does come back. Today, the 26th of September, I feel good considering I can do a full day's work on my farm. My day starts at 5 and finishes around 7. If I sit down for any period of time, though, I will fall asleep. I can guarantee you that. So if you see me dozing there at any stage during the day, just say I'll wake up in a few minutes. I do try to get a bit early, 10 or 10:30, but that's probably after 2 hours of sleep on the couch. Charlotte reckons there's a little switch somewhere on my backside that switches off when I sit down and I go to sleep automatically. I am not able to stand around for long periods. I'll walk long distances, but this has improved. I bring a little folding chair with me if I'm going anywhere, like we farm walks or different things like that, and I find that very helpful. Obviously very disappointed I have multiple myeloma, but very happy with the treatment and the care to date. Feel privileged I survived this long. And again, I can only thank the medical teams that have looked after me. What I do feel is, and it's my mantra, I suppose, in 2008 when I was getting treatment, I had a lot of friends who visited me, friends and family. And I've buried some of those now. And I can guarantee you, in 2008, none of them would have swapped places with me. So, I can only say at this stage I do feel very privileged to be still and be able to stand here and speak to you. I would like to thank Charlotte and my family again for the care and attention they have given me, and all the doctors, nurses and staff at UHL and James's to keep me above ground since 2007. Please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Okay, I wish they'd take down those photographs. What has it been like for the other half since diagnosis? Initially, I just couldn't, I have to read it because otherwise I'll start waffling. Initially, I just couldn't believe it. We all got sick, but not Daddy John. But then we adapt fast to coping with illness in our home. So a little background for the Crowe family health issues, and it's just to give you an idea as to why we feel we can cope with illness. It's because it's been around us a lot. Our firstborn Michael gave some time on life support as a newborn baby with galactosemia. It took a while to be diagnosed. That's a metabolic problem, can't have lactose. It was very scary at the time. Later in life he had a few other operations and stays in hospital as a result. He's fine now, 31, not a bothering him. He drank a couple of pints of Guinness with us last night, there's no fear of him. Mark, our second son, was also diagnosed with galactosemia, but was picked up from the heel prick at birth, so he had no real issues. With 3 young boys, aged 11, 9 and 7, I then am diagnosed with breast cancer over 20 years ago. So we were no strangers to hospitals and all that comes with it, and thank God we're all okay today. I would go so far as to say we almost have an unusual respect to illness. Maybe we don't really see what is really happening, just believe it'll all be okay in the end. Sure, hasn't it always been type of thing. To be perfectly honest, when John was diagnosed, I feared the worst for him. I didn't Google multiple myeloma, I was too afraid. But I did speak to various medic friends and our GP, as John said, and they painted a very grim picture. Pre-diagnosis, I knew there was something very seriously wrong because he lost so much weight in such a short period of time. The aches and the pains were always ongoing with farming, but the weight loss frightened me. I didn't understand it really. I don't know, do I still understand it? But I don't think I wanted to back then. I just wanted to mind him and care for him to the best of my ability. I know I drove him absolutely mad with my constant, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Actually, I annoyed myself because it just became a habit. John is the giver in his family, being the eldest of 10 children. He looks out for them all and is always there for them. So to be fair, in return, when he got sick, he had great family support. He is very private and was very private about his illness and how it was affecting him. He didn't speak a lot, always said he was okay, never moaned or complained, and in a strange way this annoyed me. I would have much preferred his honesty, but he was always thinking of others and not wanting to make them worry. I'm nervous too, so. The most difficult issues and times that I can remember were his medication. They drove me cracked. Trying to keep on top of it, understanding the different names for the same tablets, the names changing for the tablets, working out a timetable, making sure that those were taken before food were taken before food, and those for after food were after food, and the morning ones were in the morning, the night ones were in the night. John switched all off from this completely and utterly. I could have got away, popped him off. He didn't know what he was taking. Although one day, if I remember rightly, going off script, I left him on his own, and he was to take, what's it, steroids? And what did you take? He took a whole load of other tablets anyway. He took 10 of some other tablets that we thought we were going to have to race back in again. But now I'm lost. Okay, it's and because of to me that was the hardest part of it all. And because of this, it's very important that you have a good rapport with your chemist. It's totally vital, and they were brilliant in the chemist in Tipperary. Watching him being so sick in James's, Dr. Brown, Professor Brown and his team had been warned that since day one of treatment, he'd been warned by the people in Limerick that John had been troubled with his tummy and that he was sick every single day from the day he was nearly diagnosed. But in James's they thought they had a magic cure and that they'd stop John's nausea, but sadly that didn't work. So I kept a diary of every day, which is really, really important. And when we returned in 2016, this actually came in very handy, because when he was sick again, I was able to say, well, actually, this worked the last time and whatever. So it's not that I was pushing what he'd to have, but it was just handy to have a diary and remember and recall what had happened before. Depression. Initially, he was feeling down. He used to sit in a chair in silence, no television on, no conversation. Mind you, when a visitor called, he made a massive effort to perk up, and it fooled them most of the time, and I understood why he did this. But this too annoyed me, as I would have preferred to see that side of John when we were alone. But after the visitors left, he was totally exhausted. Then he got extremely depressed, and that was scary. And leaving James's, he was on a strong daily dose of Motilium, the ordinary Motilium tablet, because of his extreme tummy sickness. Our GP quickly reduced that, and after a while his tummy seemed to settle, and the advice in the regional in Limerick was to come off it if he didn't need it anymore. They may have meant us to wean off it, but we didn't know that. So of course I was in charge of the tablets, and I thought, this is great, another tablet gone, so we just stopped it. Delighted that it was another tablet less to worry about. Then the depression hit. John couldn't sleep at night, had me up checking if all the animals were okay, if they were all locked in, sourcing sandbags all over the country in case the river that never flooded was going to flood and come in and destroy the house. Crazy stuff. We brought this to the attention of the day ward, and they suggested we make an appointment with the psychiatrist, Dr. Corby. I chatted to her on my own first of all, and she thought he needed some more medication, and I nearly cried. I just said simply, look at the list I have, please, of the meds he's on. Is there anything you can increase or decrease rather than introduce another tablet, because his tummy was just settling. Immediately she questioned when the Motilium was stopped, and from my diary it was so clear that this was when the depression started. It was like flicking a switch. I don't know why I didn't spot it myself. In discussion with John, when she discussed with John privately, she asked him, was he suicidal at any stage? And his honest reply was he couldn't say for sure. That's how depressed he was. Note that Motilium is a great drug, but this is just what happened to John. John gave some time on antidepressants and all seemed to sort itself after that. So I'm not scaring anyone off Motilium, that's just John's story with it. Not wanting to insult anyone here today, but the changes in doctors, both in the day ward for treatment and in the rooms for ongoing checkups, we found frustrating. Having to keep going back to day one with his illness and discuss the same story over and over again, maybe that's changed now, possibly is. In the day ward, waiting so long for the bloods to come back to see if treatment could go ahead, often waiting hours, but all that's changed now, which is fantastic. The bloods can be done in advance, and it greatly shortens the time spent in the day ward or for checkups. That's fantastic. We were fortunate with the care and backup we had between the day ward in oncology and Ward 4B. They were our safety net. If John's temp spiked, straight into Ward 4B, bed got looked after fantastically. But in relapse in 2015, when John was unwell mid-treatment, he had to be admitted through A&E because the hospital policy had changed. This was horrible, as we were waiting within the general area of A&E with all the other sorts of bugs and stuff, and John's immune system was at zero after his transplant. I was terrified he was going to catch something. Afterwards, we were advised that we should have explained this to admissions and they would have taken him into isolation sooner. It's an ongoing learning curve the whole time. When he had routine heart checks, he spoke about that already. Well, this is when he was in A&E for different checkups, for different admissions. He'd have the routine heart checks, the echo, I think it is. And on more than one occasion, they frightened the life out of it because they'd take an echo and then say, oh no, we've to take another echo. Oh no, we'll take another echo. And then they'd bring someone else into the room and they'd take another echo. And you'd want to be an awful clown not to realise there's something happening here. And we hadn't a clue what was wrong. That was scary. But it turns out that he has an irregular heartbeat. So we understood it. We understand it now, so there's no more shocks there. As wife and of John, I found food actually comes next to the medication. It was extremely difficult. John couldn't be in the house if I was cooking. He couldn't eat. I thought I was doing everything right and I was doing everything absolutely wrong. I'd have my own dinner and the boys would have their dinner and I'd put the same dinner on a plate for John and a small little plate. He'd have to get up and leave, and he was back losing weight again, and this was mostly the first time, not so much the second time. And I ended up eventually just putting food into ramekins, small little ramekins, and bit by bit he was able to come back and eat. But that I found very frustrating because he wasn't eating. I thought, this is it, something I should be able to do. But the dietitians were a great help. The drinks back in 2007 he hated, absolutely hated. Maybe they've improved now, I don't know. But he drank them, and they helped. There was always support there. There was always support. So heading from support, from day one, we've had the most fantastic relationship with our doctors and nurses and all the medics in the region and the University Hospital Limerick. Their support is immeasurable to us. Geraldine, Fiona and their support team have made our journey very bearable and are always there to answer our queries and stop us getting worried or all worked up. I know they can see by my face when I'm under pressure and always have time to stop and ask, is everything okay, which means the world to me. University Hospital Limerick has a lot to offer, and we are only delighted it is on our doorstep 24 miles away. I will say that day one we both agreed we never wanted to enter the doors of oncology, but that is not a reflection of the staff at any level. We just didn't believe we had to go through all this again. Dr. O'Keefe and all his team are just wonderful. He's a very kind, gentle doctor and always gives us time to ask the same questions over and over again, and always answers like it's the very first time we've asked it. We feel it is very important to have good respect and relationship with your doctor. Thankfully, we certainly have that, and he is our saviour. To be very honest, I do remember when John finished treatment the first time in 2009 and our ties with the day ward were cut. We were like someone had died on us and felt saddened and lost that this support was now gone, which is strange because we never wanted to be there. But we were back. We just felt cut off. We weren't cut off. We felt, God, how are we going to survive without this? It became part of our life. Don't get me wrong, neither of us ever wanted to be a member of the C Club, but with all the wonderful help and support we have received, we have managed fine. Other stress areas were admin stuff, like while John was sick, someone had to deal with the day-to-day business, the farm, had to be carried out, search for work, banking, dinners, family, wheelchair pass, insurance claims, all those things that your head won't allow you to think about because your heart is broken. I was extremely fortunate to have a wonderful family circle. that helped, and great friends that sorted all this area for me. The go-to friends that knew what you needed when you didn't know. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, summary. It has been a rough ride from time to time, especially the initial days, trying to balance everyday life with all of the above changes. Not to mention having to learn how to milk cows, calve cows, milk heifers, get kicked asunder, but it's been worth it all. Because before this, John went out to work on the farm, I brought the boys to school and I went to work in Tiptown. We had no clue what went on the farm. Now we all know. So we made a promise the first time around John and I would take many breaks and enjoy life. But that didn't last long. We are practical people, and John's mission was to resume work ASAP and get back to normal, whatever normal is. On a funny note, back in 2007-2008, when he had appointments with Dr. O'Keefe, they used to be very early in the morning. John wouldn't be up at home till 12 o'clock in the day, so when we'd get into the regional, John would fall fast asleep in the seat inside in the conference, in the room with Dr. O'Keefe would come in. John would stay fast asleep through the whole lot. I'd talk to Dr. O'Keefe because he couldn't stay awake. And then I'd tap John on the knee. I'd say, Dr. O'Keefe's going to go now. John, have you any question for him? Oh, I have. When can I go back to work? This was the question every single time. So this was, in John's head, this was the day that when he got back to work, he was well again. So the future does make me nervous if I dwell on it. John gave 2009 to 2014 3 or 4 years frantically getting the farm up to scratch and preparing for his relapse. Then it snuck up on him. He doesn't seem as panic-driven this time, which is good. He was mentally under pressure with maybe we should have sold the cows, maybe we shouldn't have gone back milking. We only went back milking in 2014. So that's why he thought maybe we shouldn't have gone back milking. He got sick in 2015. Too much stress on us at home. We kept assuring him all was okay. This panic does seem less since the relapse 2015, but maybe it's just that he has us all trained in now and he's a bit more relaxed. I still fret when I see him in pain and immediately ask those words, are you okay? Just afraid that at any time it could come back, and what happens next time? Will we be as lucky? Thoughts like John has had 2 stem cell transplants, so what's down the road when it does come back? This we asked Dr. O'Keefe only a week ago, and he assures us that there are new treatments coming online all of the time. Then I shake myself and move on and get busy doing something. We both seem to bury ourselves into work when issues stress us. Sadly, I turn to food as well, which isn't much good, because I eat when I'm happy and I eat when I'm stressed and I just eat. So that's it, folks. Hopefully this will help you in some small way.